My girlfriend brought her ex to my place, and I saw everything. I never thought an ordinary evening after the gym could completely destroy the way I look at my relationship. What started as a normal workout night turned into one of the most exhausting and painful experiences of my life. I live alone in a big city in my own apartment. I've worked hard for that independence, and I'm honestly proud of it. My girlfriend, Lily, lives with roommates, but in reality, she spends about 80% of her time at my place. It had slowly started to feel like our shared home, even though it was technically mine. That evening, I was at the gym with my friend Mike. We were deep into our workout when Lily texted me. She said an old friend of hers had reached out, someone she hadn't seen in a long time. He was in the city for a short while and wanted to catch up somewhere quiet just to talk. I didn't think much of it. I trusted her. I told her they could use my apartment and that I'd go grab dinner with Mike so they could talk without feeling rushed. I was tired, sweaty, distracted, and honestly just wanted to finish my workout. That was my first mistake. I never asked who this old friend was. About 30 minutes later, Lily texted me again, saying they were already at my place. I replied with a simple okay and went back to lifting. No jealousy, no suspicion, nothing. Mike and I finished our workout around 7 p.m. and decided to grab food. We sat, ate, talked about random stuff, and by the time we were done, it was already past 8:30. I was exhausted. All I wanted was to go home, say hi, and collapse in a bed. As I drove back, I wondered if her friend was still there or if he had already left. I hope he was gone. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I genuinely didn't have the energy to socialize. I got home around 9 p.m. The first thing I noticed when I walked in was a pair of large men's Timberland boots in the hallway. Big, heavy, unmistakably male. My first thought was simple. One of Lily's roommates must have brought her boyfriend over. Annoying, but manageable. I took off my jacket, walked down the short hallway, and stepped into the living room. That's when I saw them. Lily was sitting on the couch. Across from her was a man. They were sitting far apart, but their bodies were angled toward each other. They were locked in conversation, looking directly into each other's eyes. When Lily noticed me, she flinched. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Looking back now, it explains everything. I greeted them casually and walked over to the guy, still assuming someone else was in the apartment. I even glanced around, expecting to see Lily's roommate come out of the bathroom or kitchen. I shook his hand and said, "Hey, I'm Lily's boyfriend." He smiled, not a friendly smile, a confident, almost smug one. "And I'm Kyle," he said, "Lily's ex." Something inside me snapped into focus. I awkwardly replied, "Oh, sorry. I thought you were a friend's boyfriend." Silence. And in that silence, it hit me all at once. My girlfriend had spent the last few hours alone in my apartment with her ex-boyfriend. I looked at Lily and asked, "So, this is the old friend you were talking about?" She nodded quietly and said yes. I was exhausted, irritated, and completely unprepared for this situation. I tried to stay calm, telling myself not to jump to conclusions. The conversation they'd been having before I arrived completely died. No one tried to pick it back up. Lily asked how my day was. I gave a short, neutral answer. And that's when I felt it. I felt like an intruder in my own apartment. After about a minute of awkward silence, I looked at Kyle and said, "Listen, man, maybe that's enough for tonight. Lily and I have some things we need to talk about." He leaned back and replied, "Well, she invited me. We were just reminiscing about old times." I looked at Lily. She couldn't meet my eyes. So I said, "All right, let me rephrase. This is my apartment, and I'm asking you to leave." Kyle turned to Lily and asked her, "Do you want me to go?" That's when I lost it. I shouted, "Why the hell are you asking her? I don't care what she wants right now. I'm telling you to get the hell out of my house." Lily finally told him he should leave. Kyle got up, grabbed his things, and walked out. The moment the door closed, Lily turned on me. She said I embarrassed her. She said my reaction was completely inappropriate. She said she had warned me he was coming. I told her no. You said a friend. You never said it was your ex. She argued that I overreacted, that he was going through a hard time, that she just wanted to support him. That meeting in my apartment proved nothing was going on. I told her that if I had supported my ex like that, she would have lost her mind. She claimed she would have understood, that she has empathy. I reminded her how angry she got when I smiled at a girl at the gym who complimented my physique. She said the conversation was over and stormed out. I didn't chase her. I didn't text her. I just sat on the couch, staring at the wall, trying to understand what had just happened. Eventually, I called my father. Talking to him grounded me. He listened quietly, asked questions, even cracked a joke that somehow made me laugh when I thought I couldn't. Then he said something that stuck with me, that sometimes people show you exactly who they are when pressure hits, and it's up to you whether you accept that or walk away. Later that night, Lily texted me. She apologized for not telling me it was her ex. She said nothing happened, that nothing ever would, that she loved me. But the words felt empty. What bothered me wasn't just that she met her ex. It was how I felt in that moment. Disrespected, replaced, ignored, like my feelings didn't matter at all. The next day was worse. I barely slept. My phone was flooded with messages. Apologies, missed calls, promises. I went for a run just to clear my head. Around midday, Lily called again. She was crying, begging me to talk to her. I felt something strange while listening to her. Nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just emptiness. I told her she could come over. When she arrived, she was a mess. Crying, apologizing, telling me she loved me and would never speak to him again. And while she stood there, breaking down in front of me, I realized something terrifying. I didn't feel anything. That's when I told her it was over. She begged. She panicked. She promised everything would change. But for me, the decision had already been made the night before. Trust was gone. Respect was gone. I asked her to pack her things. I even helped her. She left the keys on the table and walked out. Now I'm sitting alone in the same apartment where it all fell apart, trying to process how one evening erased 2.5 years of my life. So tell me honestly, did I overreact? Or was this the moment I finally chose myself? All right, moving on to the next story. I ruined my ex-boyfriend's life more than 20 years ago, and I just recently made sure it stays ruined forever. When I was in college back in the 1990s, I met Jake through mutual friends. He was 23 at the time and had already finished his undergraduate degree. He was about to move across the country, almost 4,000 kilometers away, to start a graduate program. I was also planning to move with my friends, and my new city was only about an hour and a half away from where he was going. It felt like fate. We had so much in common, both young, excited, starting new chapters of our lives, and somehow ending up almost in the same place after crossing half the country. He had 2 sisters and a younger brother, all genuinely great people. I bonded with them almost instantly. Since Jake was a graduate student and I was already working, I usually drove to see him on weekends. He rented a house with 2 other guys from his program. We were young, broke, and honestly very happy. We went on cheap dates, spent most of our time at his place, and I didn't mind at all because he bred and sold small animals there. Jake was studying animal science, so being surrounded by animals was normal for him, and I actually enjoyed it. I also became friends with Mary, the wife of Jake's academic advisor. She was around 50, worked in university administration, and was one of the kindest people I've ever met. Whenever I visited on weekends, we often had lunch together. Jake worked as a teaching assistant, and I met other people from his program through him, though I seemed to make friends faster than he did. About 2 years into the relationship, one day we were lying in bed at his place, partially undressed, relaxed, and out of nowhere he told me that he was concerned about my weight and that it was becoming harder for him to feel attracted to me. He said nothing about my health, nothing about concern or care, just that he found me less attractive. I sat up and calmly said that maybe he should make sure there was actual food in his house when I came over on weekends instead of just crackers and cheese. Even at 23, I didn't tolerate nonsense like that. I had gained maybe 4 kilograms since we met and was still wearing the same clothes, around a US size 6. I didn't argue. I wasn't emotional. I knew this was his issue, not mine. So I asked him, very calmly, what his solution was. He stared at me blankly, and said that maybe I should try to lose some weight. I told him no, I wasn't going to do that. Then I asked what he planned to do. He shrugged and said probably nothing, that he just wanted to say how he felt. I said great, thanks for sharing, got dressed, went to sleep, and the next day I drove home like I always did. We stayed together after that, and about 3 months later he called me and said he wanted to break up after nearly 3 years together. His reason, and I'm quoting here, was that I didn't know enough about science. He claimed he couldn't talk to me about his work unless he simplified everything and used common animal names instead of scientific terminology. I told him that was ridiculous and asked what the real reason was. He insisted that was the real reason. A month later, he showed up to return some of my belongings, and I demanded the truth. Finally, he admitted he had been seeing one of his undergraduate students. We'll call her Mac. She was 19. He was 26. And yes, he was her instructor. I screamed at him to get out. My roommate threatened to throw him out of the second-floor window if he didn't leave, and he left. The moment the door closed, my anger turned into hysterical laughter. I had met Mac a couple times before. Once, at a barbecue at Jake's place, she spilled something on her pants, and he asked if I could lend her sweatpants. I couldn't because I wore a smaller size and she wore a much larger one, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But in that moment, everything clicked. He had criticized my weight hoping I would break up with him because he was a coward. He clearly liked bigger women. And somehow he thought telling me that late at night, when I lived over 100 kilometers away and we had just slept together, would make me immediately dump him and drive home alone in the dark. After that realization, I messaged his roommates to let them know we had broken up, thanked them for always being kind to me, and wished them well. Both admitted they already knew about Mac and had been pressuring Jake to tell me the truth, or they would. That was why he came up with the nonsense about science. One of the roommates, a genuinely sweet and attractive guy named George, offered to collect my remaining things and suggested I come over for the weekend. He said we could drink, have fun, and do all the things Jake never wanted to spend money on. I agreed. When I arrived, George let me in while Jake was out. I took photos of all the animals. Even though I wasn't a graduate student, I was observant. I knew Jake had an animal on the endangered species list. He didn't breed it. It was a rescue animal that legally couldn't be released back into the wild. All he had to do was file paperwork and pay a small fee. But he refused because he didn't want the government involved. I photographed that animal, the conditions, and another animal that was completely illegal to keep in that state, sitting in an aquarium by a window visible from a street. Later that night, George and I went out drinking, came back around midnight, just in time for Jake and Mac, who were watching TV, to see me drunk in a short dress, with George practically carrying me inside. I slept in George's room. He was a gentleman, but he did make sure to walk through the hallway in nothing but boxers a few times. We laughed loudly and fake moaned so they could hear us. In the morning, as I slowly ate a donut in a wrinkled dress with messy hair, Jake told me I didn't need to act like that in front of him. George smiled, kissed the top of my head, and Max sat there not knowing where to look. I told her to enjoy my leftovers and left. I thought that was my petty revenge. It wasn't. The next day, I developed the film, yes, actual film, and called the state wildlife department. I reported the animals' possible overcrowding and the 2 animals that were illegal in that state. It turned out Jake wasn't well liked by his peers or his roommates. I was. George and the other roommate offered to file a complaint with the university about a teaching assistant sleeping with his student and showing favoritism. That night at the bars, they told everyone they knew. The program was small, so the news spread fast. When I submitted the full report and photos to wildlife inspectors, I also called Mary, Jake's advisor's wife. I told her he admitted to sleeping with a student and sent her his own emails where he confessed. She was furious and immediately told her husband. A couple of weeks later, George called me, excited, saying wildlife inspectors were at the house seizing animals. Mac told inspectors all animals belonged to Jake, clearing the roommates. Inspectors returned with a warrant, searched Jake's room, seized everything except a few fish, and Jake wasn't even there. Now here's the important part. Graduate students rely on grants, most funded by the federal government. Jake had just received a federal grant around the time we broke up. I called and asked how to report that a grant recipient was under investigation for illegal possession of endangered animals. Long story short, he lost a grant, had to repay nearly $30,000, and would never be eligible for federal funding again. The university fired him from teaching and revoked his stipend. He avoided prison, but paid massive fines and lost his animals. He ended up leaving the PhD program with only a master's degree. Years passed. I moved on. I got my own master's degree, ironically in helping scientists explain their research to normal people. Jake married Mac. They had kids. She left science. He returned to animal breeding. Then, 20 years later, I was invited to give a lecture at a major university. Afterward, someone called out my name. It was Jake. I pretended not to recognize him, said my memory must have erased him, and walked away. Later that night, over dinner, faculty mentioned Jake had applied for a teaching position. I casually mentioned what happened at his previous university. Background checks followed. Old records surfaced. Complaints, investigations, everything. He won't be getting that job. Karma doesn't always need your help. Sometimes all you have to do is tell the truth to the right people. And if someone who claims to love you criticizes your body, remember, the problem isn't you. It's them.